Okay, we're good to go. We're recording.
All right. Good morning.
Good morning, sir. How are you doing this time?
I am doing well. How's your Sunday going? Or is it
Yeah, it
almost
is.
Monday?
It's Sunday. It's 8:50 p.m. So almost nighttime in India. Evening for teenagers, nighttime for adults.
So it's 11 o'clock over here in Florida. Um, things are going well. So yeah, I guess last time we tried to have a conversation, I nearly threw up on my computer.
uh, yeah, that.
I ate I ate a bad hot dog, and at a baseball game,
Hmm.
we have a baseball team called the Tampa Bay Rays.
Yeah, you
And
shared a video of that match where some fan walked over to the fence.
oh yeah, the guy that ran on the field and got like tackled.
Yeah.
Um, so this it's an old stadium,
Hmm.
and I ate a questionable hot dog, and I'm like, oh, I'm fine. And then it just snuck up on me, that morning, and
Uh, what do hot dogs
so
in the US consist of? Like, are they vegetarian? Like, what is a standard hot dog made of in US?
uh mystery. It's a mystery. Um,
Okay.
it really depends on where you get it. Like if you get like a um, a well-made um, hot dog. Usually they're from the Northeast, like in the like around New York and stuff. They make really good hot dogs,
Okay.
and it's usually a lot of pork. Maybe there's like beef and pork hot dogs, and they're both really good. But what happens here in the South a lot of the times is they use the other parts, meaning they'll take all the other parts that they don't use, like they sell them at the butcher shop, and they'll mince them up and put them in the hot dog. So usually it's like it can be questionable sometimes, like but at the baseball game, I just think it was probably sitting out too long,
Probably the
and
changing weather and the heat. This summer is
yeah,
really hot.
so um, it was good. It wasn't worth the pain. That was like one of the worst foodborne illnesses I've ever had, but I survived. So just part of life.
Yeah, food poisoning. Like, I don't recall me having food poisoning, but yeah, I recently did get a small bug or something. I don't know what caused that disease which I got, but last month I think, yeah, I think last month I fell sick for 2 to 3 days. My blood pressure dropped a lot, and it was probably because of the heat. Uh, I was working out for some event, and I think that's when I fell sick.
So how is the heat over in India?
It's humid right now. It's very humid. So the main heat was in May June. So as June comes to an end, it starts to rain. So some parts of India are flooded. There are reports of drowning. Obviously, millions of worth of property damages. Rescue missions are going on, and then there are some parts which are like having a drought. So
So parts of India are under a lot of rain, getting a lot of rain, and people are drowning.
yes,
Oof. And then the other part, it's very similar. That's very similar to the United States right now. That's
it's a
odd.
huge
I guess it,
geography, big topography. Yeah, diversity, I guess.
yeah, we're having the same sort of problems. Like in the Northeast, in New Hampshire, parts of New York, so the Northeast part of the United States, it's flooding like crazy. Apparently, in the Southwest, it's a lot of drought, like L.A., Las Vegas, Los Angeles. They are just they don't have enough water. All the lakes are drying up. And then in the southeast, it's just super humid. It's like pretty hot, but we're doing okay in my area. I mean, it's still really hot, but I'm used to it. Um,
I guess
so I
my
guess that's just
area is humid throughout the year. I guess.
Florida is humid nonstop. It's humid on Christmas. It is one season all year. We get a little bit of a relief during like November, December, where it gets a little bit drier and a little bit cooler. But I pretty much grew up not knowing what 50 degrees was. So what that felt like, it's um, for people that aren't from Florida, like other people from the United States, they come down here and like I've seen tourists just get heat stroke, like out and about on the beach and stuff because they're not ready for that intense, heavy air, and it just takes it out of them, and um, it's pretty intense.
It's strange how tourist destinations like Disneyland operate in that much heat. How do they manage to gather such huge number of crowd? And it's there must be so much bacteria on those rides there in Disneyland.
Yeah, I'm not that big a fan of Disneyland because I grew up right around there,
Okay.
and I've had family that work there, um, and Disney doesn't like all the people that like put on the costumes,
Hmm.
like goofy costume, and they go around and take pictures with the kids and whatnot. They're not paid that much for what they do, and then they're putting on that outfit in that crazy hot weather, and you'll see there's videos of it online of them like passing out while they're on a parade waving to people. Um, but I don't know. I think Disney is crazy expensive now. Um, and yeah, it's really hot, and um, I don't know, like you're saying, yeah, it could be a dirty place too sometimes.
I
So
think Disney is not doing so well in terms of its output, in media production as well. Like I haven't liked a single Phase 4 movie of Marvel, like a single movie. I think Shang-Chi was the last movie that I thoroughly enjoyed. I was like, yes, this is great. This one new hero. I think this one new hero that I like. The hero, the villain, the story all went great. After Shang-Chi, I think Disney, like, I know it's a hot take, but there is just too much identity politics now in Disney.
I completely agree. And I've been thinking about this a lot. I don't know where all this is coming from. Like the modern Hollywood thing to do is to play identity politics, and it's really weird. It's really weird. Like the Cleopatra thing Netflix made, where they turned Cleopatra, black,
Yep.
and Egypt has now like banned Netflix. And it's like, why are they doing that? And like, I'm just thinking, oh, these people are like just woke morons, but they're doing it to impress whoever. But no, I think it's almost a business strategy to get people riled up and then talking about it. But I don't think if that is the thing they're doing, it's not working because people are very turned off by it. But they also might be doing it out of ideology. So
It's
I don't know. It's like really weird.
I think opinionated people with lots of fame and lots of money are doing whatever they want, and since they are highly opinionated, and like having opinions is fine. I mean, every person has their own opinions. Uh, but when you're in charge of a production company, even if you look at it from a profit point of view, okay, I'm making a movie or a documentary. I want this thing to be profitable. Why are you taking a route that is known to be disliked? Like, what? It doesn't make sense.
It's this whole idea that they're updating things for modern audiences, and I don't know. It's a lot of this is baffling because they do lose money on some of this stuff, and it's a weird ideology thing, but it's really starting to backfire across the United States. Um, but we'll see. Like they're making Snow White and the Seven magical creatures. Well, they're not calling them dwarfs anymore. They're now the seven magical creatures.
Why? 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 Why?
and and Snow White is Puerto Rican.
No, 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 no. That's not what I
Yeah.
heard. No, 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 no.
Let me see if I can pull up the picture.
I don't think I'm the right kind of Indian to say these things. Why? Why?
I mean, we are talking about it, so I mean, if that's their PR motive, um,
I
but
recently finished my paper on representation of Indian family values and marriage values in cinema. I took two case studies of two of the most well liked and popular shows in Indian television history, and when I looked through those shows, I found that a lot of the ideas of what a family unit is supposed to be, or what a marriage is supposed to be like, uh, media has the power to create an atmosphere around what is normal and what isn't normal. And I think that is why our laws are also shaped around that, because uh, lawmakers don't want to address difficult issues, and neither does the public. So it becomes very easy to just take whatever is happening in contemporary media and make sure, all right, this is normal, people are watching this, it's fine, make a law around it. And these laws are also vague, so sometimes it works out in the favor of the man or woman. The second you do anything borderline different from what the media is portraying, uh, you get ostracized by the society really quickly. And it used to be an issue probably 25 years back, when you relied on your local community for economic gains as well as protection and everything. But with the internet, with capitalism, with modern economy, with the idea of one people, one word, which is cosmopolitan, uh, economic reliance on your local tribe, your local society has decreased a lot, and that has given a lot of uh, freedom, or the idea of being able to survive individually to individuals who are breaking that societal norm. Uh, and when they ask for representation, it's not that they're asking for representation in media as their primary goal. I think what they were trying to do is that they were trying to normalize themselves just as much as other people are normalized. But the way they are going about it is that we are the good people, and anybody who refuses to acknowledge that we are good people who exist is a bad person. They are a bigot, and I think that approach is very problematic in today's world.
so are you seeing the same sort of trends in India, like cinema right now? These sort of things.
Um, Kind of the opposite.
Okay, so what's your thoughts about RRR? That
Uh,
movie from like a year ago.
yeah, it won the Oscar. Great. It's a good movie. It's good portrayal of cinema. Uh, Not a huge fan of the entire aesthetic of one person. Like, I like the story. Don't get me wrong. Um, I just don't like the way masculinity is represented in that. It's a good depiction of brotherhood. I would say that's very good. Uh, that movie did not make me think a lot. It was a very palatable movie. Like, that's a movie you can watch with your family while the TV is going on, and you can be eating and doing something else. Uh, it's a great movie, but not my cup of tea. I think I'm more inclined to something where you have to be alert every single second. Uh, Something like Game of Thrones, but like it's a series and that's a movie. So in terms of movies, I would say The Shining. I mean, things which Stanley Kubrick does, or the new Avatar by James Cameron, even to some extent Oppenheimer. So I think that's more of my cup of tea, where I can't do anything else while watching the movie. It just has to be the movie. RRR is a good representation of the vibrancy of Indian culture, the dances, uh, the way we express ourselves. That is, it's a good movie. It's a very palatable, easy to consume movie, and I think that is one of the main reasons it became so popular. it's because it was easy to consume. It was not making anyone uncomfortable by asking the real questions. So
Ooh, that's a good point. Yeah, it was a sort of silly movie, but it was yeah, it became popular over here.
yeah, definitely.
It was really interesting to see that movie become like as popular as it did, and I think it became popular because Hollywood is not delivering what you criticized that movie for, which is masculinity. Like it's just so deficit over here that when that movie came out, it's like, oh, this is like a guy throwing a tiger at other people, and like it's so over the top, like old school, like 1980s action movie that I just think people are just wanting to see that, which is really weird. Like I didn't like Hollywood did not see that and go, well, let's do something like that.
Yeah, I think
And
they tried with Fast and Furious, but how much can you milk a
yeah,
single cow? Like, how much can you milk that one cow? That's
that's true. I guess yeah, I guess maybe they do try. It's just that movie was so unique because we've never seen anything like it. Because no one, I mean, we don't really, see those type of movies, and then that one just came out of nowhere. It seemed, and um, it was probably more popular than most American movies at that time. Like just with like the students talking about it, like young kids like enjoyed it.
yeah.
Like my students.
That dance became a very good TikTok trend as well.
Yeah. So I mean that was sort of fascinating. So yeah, I wanted to like ask you about it, see what you thought, and that's a very good like opinion that you had. Yeah,
It's
it wasn't very deep, but it was just cool.
it was cool. It's fun to watch. It is the it is everything which India is on a festive level. It has music, it has dance, it has acting, it has drama, it has tiger. Uh, so it represents the nation. It feels great when our cinema is watched, appreciated, critically uh, examined by a huge pool of audiences, because that's how things improve, right? uh, like I said last time, India needs to learn about the world, and the world also needs to learn about India. We have the biggest population on earth, and huge diverse set of opinions. And I think if we were to I think we have seen this in history. If we are to uh, be put in systems where things are managed in order, uh, we have the ability to become CEOs, millionaires, billionaires. Not that other countries people don't have that. Every nation has that. But since uh, the generations before me have came out of poverty, like in the last 10, 20 years, uh, we have that nature of, okay, you just pay me the minimum amount and I'll still put more hours, because anything that uh, a Western European or an American nation has is probably way better than what we have here in same economic conditions. Uh, so I think that nature, uh, when it is acknowledged, it feels great. Obviously, we are creating cinema, we are doing great with financial technology. The fintech sector is doing great. Medication in India is very cheap. Hospitalization in India is very affordable. If you're white and if you need some treatment, which can be very costly in European nations or America,
Yeah,
India is great for that. We have uh, we have almost world class infrastructure. We vaccinated around a billion people, so, and within 1 year, that's like very effective.
I think it's hard for maybe it's just me, but I'm just gonna generalize all Americans when I say that. I just mean like me, but like to like just picture how many people are in India. Like when you say a billion, it's like just
It's
how many people are in your town? You think
uh, probably around 40 million.
40 million?
Let me see the population of my state, Uttar Pradesh. Just
That's a lot.
I think I'm downplaying it. Let's see. I think it's more than what half of Europe is. Okay, so the population of my state is 235 million. Okay,
235 million people. Oh my
live in my state,
God.
the capital,
Wow.
and in my city. Let's also check my city. I live in the capital, so it is probably going to be much dense because it's the capital, of course. One stands 100,000, 10,000. Okay, it's a how do you read this in American system? One stands 100,000, 10,000, 100,000. Okay, 3.9 million,
Yeah.
almost 4 million. 4 million.
Wow. Um, so is it, I'll probably sound naive, but like, how is like traveling on like anything like public transportation or like the roads? Like, how crowded is it? I guess is what I'm
It
asking.
is very crowded, but public transportation in India is very affordable and very effective actually, since it is
Oh, okay.
so unorganized. You have a lot of variations. You have electric options, you have petrol options, you have diesel options, and all these vehicles. They it. Have you seen the New York taxis? The yellow New York taxi
Mm-hmm.
system. Uh, we have uh, we have Uber here. We have Ola. Ola is like an Indian application of Uber, the Indian version. Uh, and apart from these two formal ones, which are using your mobile applications, the informal public transportation system in India is huge. It's very effective, and a lot of people use it for daily commuting because if you're not somebody who wants to drive regularly, it's the alternative is just much more affordable, much more convenient. You don't have to worry about parking because parking spaces are very limited. So public
I can
transportation
only
is good
imagine.
here. We also have something called the metro. You guys have the subway in New York. Metro is subway
Mm-hmm.
above the ground.
Okay.
So yeah,
How's that?
very good. It has air conditioning. You can charge your phones on it. Very few people use it, so it's great. It's running in loss, but it's great. You can travel
So,
easily.
what does that mean? It's running at a loss.
It's running at a loss because the people who are in charge of planning these things are dumb.
Okay, so it's losing money.
It's losing money.
Do people care about that, or is that just like okay, that's just part of the deal?
No, in India,
So it's a little bit corrupt.
I don't think so. Like, not that I can see.
Okay.
Like, as a passenger point of view, it is offering great service at a very affordable price. I think what happened was that I was reading a case study on, I think, Hungary or Czech Republic. I don't recall, but there was some dictator. Not saying anything. Some dictator who said that okay, I want to make an underground railway line or something there and there. And so the engineer said, okay, a lot of children can use this public transportation to travel to university, colleges, and schools. So we must connect all of them. And so the wife of the dictator said, children, no, they are getting fat. Let them walk. Connect this to all the political buildings. When have
I
politicians
actually,
ever used public transportation?
that was Ceausescu. I remember this story. Oh, where was that? Czechoslovakia or something?
Uh, Hungary
But,
and Czechoslovakia.
um,
So the engineers had to make a very small, narrow, because they knew it will be used, and now it is one of the most risky platforms to stand because it's a very thin platform. It is operational till today. Students of college do use that because, duh,
well, I mean, not to
duh.
build something because you think students are getting overweight. I mean that. I mean, I guess this is very American of me. That's a good problem to have. People getting overweight. It means there's too much food. It means okay, it's better than the other problem, which is famine. You know,
Doesn't make any sense. Students
right?
are students commute daily. Colleges are open Monday to Saturday. Some case Monday to Friday. How often do politicians have to go to political building? And when will they use public? When has any politician in the history of mankind used public transportation without cameras?
That's a good point. Without cameras, yeah. Um,
They travel in
I'm trying to think
bulletproof
of something.
motorcades.
No,
They travel in bulletproof motorcades.
yeah, even in New York, where the subways are so prevalent, no, they're not traveling around in them. They're getting limos still.
The
So,
last time a president tried to travel amongst people in an open top car, we all know what happened.
yep. Um,
The people do not like
so
politicians. I know it.
We try where I live in Tampa, in Florida. We have tried to get a metro.
Okay.
Like we've tried to build it several times, and every time the voters vote it down and kill it. And well, because they're scared it'll lose money, but it's not really about that. That's just like the tool they use to kill it. Like, oh, it's going to lose money. No one else cares about the subway making or losing money. They like that it's there in like LA and New York. The reason we don't have one is because we're such a car centric culture where I live. We have gigantic roads, and that's what you live off of. That's like center to the culture, and it's crazy. Like you don't really think about it until something like this comes up, and there's a vote, and people get angry about it. They're like, they want to. It's called the Sun Rail. They want to build from here to Orlando down to Miami, like a little triangle
Okay.
in like the middle of Florida. And every time it gets voted down, like no matter who brings it up or how affordable it is, it's just you're not taking my freedom away. That's like what the mentality is. So this has nothing to do with that. And it's just like, no, you trying to kill my car. It's like what?
Uh, yeah, I guess.
So
Uh,
that's the mentality.
yeah, I mean, there's also this notion about public infrastructure or public services. When I say losing money, I did not think about it through. It's a service. It costs money. Like, we don't say the army loses $800 million. The army costs $800 million. There's a difference between losing money and costing money. So I think that needs to be. I mean, public infrastructure is very useful, but it needs active participants to help maintain it that way. Since in India, I think only 7 to 8% of the population owns a four-wheeler, a car. So it makes sense to have great public transportation in India because a lot of people are frequently relying on that. They frequently use it. I'm one of those people who hates to drive, so I'll always choose public transportation. I'll always choose Uber. Uh, so yeah, and the roads in India, okay, they are improving. There's still uh, there's still work that needs to be done. Some funny instances do come out. In India, we have a tradition of breaking a coconut uh, when we are doing the opening of some event, something auspicious. So if it's a housewarming party or something like that, we break a coconut. It's supposed to be it signifies happiness and piousness that okay, this is a good beginning. It will signify good beginning. So one time there was some politician who was trying to like he was invited to open a newly built section of road, and when he smacked that coconut, the road broke.
So he hit the coconut and then the road just like
The road broke. Let me see if I can find that article. Uh, so one or two
oh,
instances.
that's funny.
Uh,
Yeah, here in the states, it's there's like federal highways and they're always good. Like a lot of our tax money goes into the roads. Like if someone's like starving to death, we don't care. But if there's a pothole, people get angry. It's such an odd American thing.
hmm,
Um, like we don't want to help, large groups of people unless it's the road, then we got to fix it. So, but then if you go outside of the highway
hmm,
into like local town streets, the county builds those. And it's really differs state to state. Florida, we actually have pretty good roads because they're new, like, because we've only been developed after World War II. Um, but if you go to like Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, they get pretty rough. Um, but overall, America is a very car centric culture.
yeah, I think
I guess that's the amount of space, and we're not dealing with probably the same amount of people either, right?
I mean, if you have an open piece of land and the car lobby, I mean,
The car lobby is very powerful
I
here.
mean, it makes sense. I mean, it is fine to have cars. It is fine to have that freedom, but it becomes problematic when you have laws like jaywalking. It's road.
That's a very that's from the car industry. Like they have manipulated our laws very heavily.
Why is it a crime
It's a
if
crazy law.
I'm a taxpayer? This road was built for taxpayer money. I'm on it. How is it a crime if I'm on it and that person in a car is on it? I mean, it's my road as well.
So the car company's public relations department is really good. Like this is like 50 years ago, but they did that. So any lawsuit or mentality, because we used to have the same mentality, like the street is for, if a person's in the street, you can't run them over. And that mentality has changed to
It's
where
not.
a car will run you over here. If they
It's
see
not.
someone, they don't care. It's like this, the road is for cars.
It's not a
That's it.
mentality. If you see someone, don't. Okay, we have this mentality that if you see a person, don't run them over. It's not a mentality. It's
It's not like people are like gunning for you in their car, but if they were to run you over on accident, nothing really happens to them. It's like, well, why were you in the road? But the cop would ask you if you got hit, why were you in the road? Instead of, what was that car doing? So you see how like that mentality switches? They were really smart with how they changed that American mentality to, well, blame the jaywalker, blame the person.
blame the
So even
person.
I'm saying the jaywalker.
The jaywalker. I identify as the jaywalker.
So how is driving in India? Like, is it wild out?
It's you have to be dominant on the road, but you're not really driving. If you're in the inside the colonies, the local streets, you can barely cross 10 kilometers an hour. 20 maybe if you're on a good road. If you're on very good roads, you can go as high as 40 kilometers an hour, 60 kilometers an hour, no issues. Highways have been improving a lot in the last decades. Highways have improved tremendously. Recently, I and a friend of mine, we took a road trip to the place where Gautam Buddha's last rituals were performed, where he died. So we just wanted to visit that place to learn more about Buddhism and the history of Gautam
Who?
Buddha,
Oh,
Gautam Buddha.
okay.
So
Yeah.
yeah, he died in a place near Kushinagar. That's 350 kilometers from here, approximately 300 kilometers. So uh, we made that trip up and down in 5 hours highway. So it's considered very good as per Indian standards. So it was fantastic. I mean, roads are improving. Yes, highways have become much better. Like you said, the national highways, which are built by the central government, they are getting much better. There is a much higher chance of corruption uh, in local towns and states, but the roads are improving. It takes time, but once the roads are built, they last for a long time. If you're in living in good cities, uh, if you're living in some offshore like local village, I don't know.
Yeah, that's pretty much true for the United States too. There's some off the grid communities still. Um, we've actually made that illegal in Florida because we have to rein in our off the grid communities. That's what DeSantis said. Because we have these people that don't want to be part of society, um, and they just want to go do their own thing, and that's fine, whatever. But then they still sort of want to be part of the community. They just don't want to pay taxes. That's what it is. But they live completely disconnected from the electrical grid, and what they end up doing is building trenches for their sewage. So they go out and live in the middle of the state. They technically don't have any electricity, but what they do is they get generators. Then they get a big trailer and they put it in the middle of the woods, and then they'll build their own road. Um, and it's where a lot of crime happens in these sort of like little communities. Um, but yeah, so there's parts of Florida where the roads really fall apart because these communities have been around for a bit. But
And
Yeah, so it seems, huh?
that I think that's what makes it interesting to just take your car and take a ride along those off-roading trips or whatnot. I mean, that's kind of fun, but like the things we consider crime, if somebody is choosing to detach themselves from society, then probably then they do not conform to the normative realities of those societies. Thus, their definition of crime may not necessarily fit one's definition of crime who's living within the civilization. Like, that's my take on it, I would say.
Oh, that's fascinating. Yeah, I would agree. It's almost really American to like do something like that. It's very like based on freedom. Um, but like a lot of our homeless problem comes from that mentality.
Freedom.
Like, well, there's drugs, right?
Oh,
Drugs, mental illness, because we closed down all of our mental asylums in the United States in the 1980s, and all those people just went onto the streets. And so some liberals literally think this homeless problem that I don't know if you heard about it in the news, like these
I've
tents that are in LA and San Francisco. So some liberals are like, oh, this is a good thing because these people used to be locked up and abused, and now they're on the streets and defecating and
yeah, I
being
mean, New
crazy
York,
on the streets. But
even New York
it's
has a homelessness problem now.
yeah, New York, their homeless problem has gotten a little bit worse. But it's always been there. It's just like part of the fabric of that city. They actually live underneath the city. It's
Okay,
like in like there's there's New York City, and then the subway.
okay.
In between the city streets and the subway is like the sewer line, and that's where this is gonna sound bad. They're called the mole people.
Okay, because they live underground. Okay.
Yeah, and it's really sad. Like when you see them, it's like, oh man, you know. But they could get help if they wanted to, especially in New York with
Are
such a liberal city. Like if they wanted out of that, they could get it. Like they could probably get a free apartment if they wanted one.
are these individuals citizens of the United States? How much of that population is immigrants?
So that's actually a really good question. Um, so it's a different thing. They're not immigrants; they're American citizens. A lot of times, they're unfortunately veterans that
Okay,
might be dealing with PTSD
army personnel.
and like post traumatic stress disorder, and they just withdraw from society. They want nothing to do with it. They don't want to work. They don't care about paying a mortgage. They don't care about, they're just like almost burned out from society, and they just sort of withdraw down there out of like it's interesting if you ever talk to them. And then some of them have mental illness, and then some of them have drug addictions. Like there's almost two parts of the like in poverty in America. There's that one side, right, doing some sort of mental issue. The I guess it would be three parts. So and then there's another side, the people that inflation is just destroying right now, and they can't afford a place to live. What happens to them is they'll usually stay in their cars,
Okay.
and because we're so car centric, we'll have these areas, at least in Florida, where people can go and park their cars and they basically live out of them, and they go shower in something called the YMCA. And a lot of students at the school I teach at actually are dealing with something like that right now. It's sad, but people don't stay in that condition for a long time. You know, people get down on their luck, and then they can, a lot of times they work their way out of it. So that's why it sort of works, and the government tries its best to actually help those people. And then another aspect is what you mentioned, immigrants. It depends what type of immigrant. So, you know, in America, we get all different types. But let's say Indian immigrants never, they always come into family somehow, or they'll find a job. And I've never seen a struggling Indian immigrant outside of someone working really, really hard, if that makes any sense. Like,
Get it?
um, even if they come here with no money, no name, whatever, no connections, we'll say, because that's half the battle. They will find a way. Somehow they'll start working at a gas station, and then next thing you know, next year they own the gas station somehow. It's just it's interesting. It's similar with Chinese immigrants. Um,
So Asians in
there's some
general,
areas,
I think, have Asians in general have like a very good work ethic. I think.
yeah, they do, and yeah, they seem to be very well educated too.
It's
Um,
all about STEM. If you're an Asian, it's all about STEM. And uh, I think it's because of our education system that we learn to keep our head down, follow orders, and do work. That's
so the other side of it, with the people coming up from Mexico, so it's interesting because those people are changing. So it's not Mexicans. We actually lose population to Mexico now
okay.
more than Mexicans coming in here. It's people from Central America, Venezuela, South America
Latin
that
Americans
come
in
up.
general,
So countries that have collapsed basically in South America. Those,
Honduras, El Salvador, and these nations.
yeah. Also, you'll get Haitians that will, I guess, um, come over in a boat to Mexico and then come up through the Rio Grande. But also, we're starting to get Chinese people now that are coming from China to like Honduras, then up to Arizona through Mexico. And that's also really unique because it's to take that route into America, you're going through almost like Death Valley. It's a horrific desert that also has mudslides and like liquid sand. I'm forgetting what it's called. I think a name, but it's like liquid sand you get stuck in like a mud pit. And this this kid from Venezuela this year took that route, and he's a student at my school, and he was showing me pictures he took. I wish I would have like told him to send them to me. But when he came up, and so obviously he's an illegal immigrant. The law in my state is I can't do anything about that. You know, it's just you got to teach him, which I'm fine with. Don't get me wrong, great kid. Um, and I was trying to like make a connection with him, right? Because he didn't really speak much English. And he was showing me the pictures of his journey, and I was looking through them, and I'm like, oh my god, this is horrific. Like him and his entire family were traveling through the desert, and like then like this jungle part. Somehow it goes from like desert to jungle. I don't really get it, but in this really muddy part of the border, there were like people stuck in the mud that were like dead for like a couple months, and you're just like passing that. It's wild. Um,
Mm.
it's gonna eventually be written about at some point, I would imagine,
Yeah, so
by
why
these
do you
people.
think people go through so much struggle to reach United States of America? What is it about USA and opportunity that entices people so much?
I think it's a chance to restart. It's a chance to. It's just a. I think some people see it as a reset, almost like a reset button. Like let's say things didn't work out in their country, or maybe they were just from really extreme poverty, or I know a lot of Hondurans, um, MS-13, this criminal gang, they'll get a run in with them somehow, and then they can't go back to their country because they'll get killed. But it's opportunity, and you'll catch some hell from Americans. You'll get a little bit taste of that American racism that's so well known. Um, but after X amount of time, you're then just a normal person, and you're then sort of just accepted into that society. So it's almost like hazing, where you're like sort of picked on and bullied. And that lasts for a little bit, but that doesn't happen to everyone. Um, and I just think it's the opportunity to start anew. That, and I think also some people have some misconceptions too about what exactly all this is.
Hmm.
Um, I think they get the Disney-fied version of it too, a little bit in their heads
The
about,
Netflix version.
yeah, about it being a perfect place because it's we have problems and poverty just like everywhere else. But I also think there is something here, and this has been sort of debated about the American dream recently, if that's something that exists, something that isn't just a scam, right? That's one intellectual saying it's just a scam, it's a trick to get people to think they can work hard and do well. And it's like, well, no, it's real. Like if you come here, you can establish yourself and make a life for yourself here. Will it be perfect? No,
No way.
but it can still happen. Um, and there's people that try to make it work that it doesn't work out for them to what they're thinking. But they can still come here and be successful. And I think we've been pretty successful as a nation at doing that. Our government wants immigration. Like, don't let them fool you. They'll cry about the border all day long. They want immigrants because that helps fill in the gaps of our demographics while also basically we're stealing people that are educated. Like one of the most expensive things to do is educate someone.
Yeah.
And when you can just sort of, I'm not gonna say steal people, but take people from another nation who that nation has spent a lot of money educating them, it's like, oh wow, we are ripping these people off almost.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense to I mean, if you have a resource, like this is one of the things which bothers me a lot about how Marvel presents the idea of Wakanda and Black Panther. Have you seen both the Black Panthers?
I've seen the first one. I haven't seen the second one because I won't get into it, you know. But yeah, it's
So in the first one, they established that this place is Wakanda. It is made of five tribes, and they thought to hide in plain sight because they had this one valuable resource. Never in the history of mankind has isolationism worked out for the benefit of the people. If you have a resource, the more amount of people that have access to that technology, the more diverse set of groups approach it, the more diverse problems it is going to solve. It doesn't make sense as a country.
yeah, that's it's a weird story, and also like what I get the reason I just have an issue with that movie is okay, so they have this valuable resource, they're hiding, and then they have all of this poverty around them. You had Rwanda happen and genocides and this horrific tragedies, and they're what they're just chilling,
And
like
it's weird how like the entire second part of the movie. I think no, sorry. Have you seen Falcon and the Winter Soldier?
I know about it. I've watched like one episode.
Okay, so like the towards the end, Falcon, the new Captain America, he gives a speech to the senators. You've got to do better. If you have the resources, you should distribute them equally. One people, one word. We should distribute our resources. If we have something valuable, we have to distribute. We have to make sure. That's exactly what the Wakandans refuse to do. How are they the good people? What? Be consistent in your ideas. That should you share your resource or should you not share your resource? And there's no way in hell a country like Wakanda could develop. Look at Venezuela. Look at the paradox of plenty.
Right. Venezuela has a lot of lessons in it from basically socializing the cities while abusing the farms to socialize the cities, punishing people for working hard, incentivizing people not to work. It's they're like, oh, it's communism. I'm like, I guess it's a really weird system when you look into it.
Yeah.
And then it ended with everyone eating from trash cans. It's like
I don't.
so horrendous.
I don't think the
Um,
people who were in charge of Venezuela understood communism or socialism or economics at all. I would be
yeah,
surprised. I would be surprised if they can tell me the difference between micro and macroeconomics.
and they still have an opportunity to turn stuff around if they really
With
wanted
oil.
to. Yeah,
How?
it's just I, I think corruption and greed is the main part. You know, um, But like with what you're saying about Marvel, that's it's really weird because I see a lot of CIA propaganda in it or Department of
Yeah,
Defense.
the military propaganda in it is intense.
So any movie that's made in the United States that's made like a mainstream movie, a non-independent movie, pretty much has to get approved by our Department of Defense, which is kind of funny since we always criticize China for like censoring our movies.
Hmm.
But the mainstream movies here are all vetted by our Department of Defense. They are advisors, and it's propaganda. It's very subtle American propaganda, and that's why you see a lot of these ideas. I think with Black Panther, it was they're really trying hard to, I think, eliminate some racist ideas that were in our society, and that's totally fine, right? That's like probably a good thing. It's just a weird way to do it, right? Instead of making like a logical
Yeah,
play to people's emotions, that's been working. Like that strategy has worked. I've seen the South get way better over my lifetime through education, not through movies. So
exactly. I think the problem is entertainers. Like I keep talking about this all the time. The problem starts when entertainers start virtue signaling and playing holier than thou human beings. You are no better than a stripper. If shut up, shut up.
it's a problem. But all of our actors and writers are actually on strike now. I don't know if you
Yeah,
saw that.
I've heard about that writer strike. I think guild strike or whatever. I got to know about it because last week Tonight stopped airing, and John Oliver joined the writer strike, and I was like, okay, something's happening. That's how I got to know about it. I used to watch John Oliver
Yeah.
religiously.
Um, yeah, John, he's a funny guy. Um, so I don't know what's going to happen with a lot of movies or shows because it's writers and actors, but it's um it's all over streaming. How because the way it worked in the United States, we had originally we had TV, and then we had something called cable,
Okay,
which
so
was all of
every
these
time
channels.
a show would repeat, the writers would get some percentage of that, but with the streaming
Yep.
services, it is not possible to do that. Yes, and also the writers are not no longer uh, on set while the production is happening due to these streaming. They're trying to compartmentalize things. So if one season is being shot, it's in production stage. To say, oh, you write the second season as well, and you do it. And I think
And
streaming.
with the actors, I don't know if you saw this. They're taking scans of them and turning them into AI models so that they can reuse them for the rest of time. That's what it says in the contract that they signed. So, or they weren't even giving them contract; they were just doing it to these like extras. And there's a large amount of like actors out in LA that do small roles to do make enough money. It's a very small amount. I don't know what it is, but it's not. You don't have to make a lot of money, and then you get healthcare through their union. And so when they were starting to do this new AI thing, that cut down these people's work, and they were starting to lose healthcare over it. So it's AI starting to take out jobs. It's interesting. So they're trying to go against that.
I mean, I get that strike part, but like you said about characters, I mean, with actors, it's their physical appearance, it's their ability to act out a character that defines. And this is one thing which I've noticed is not going to a problem in Japan because they use anime, so it's animated from start to finish. Uh, so I think it's a good time. It's an interesting time where AI is taking jobs which do not require a skill set to be learned, and a skill set which requires continuous feedback. For example, me as a designer, if somebody approaches me, oh, AI will take your job. Nah, buddy. Nah. With an AI, you need to tell them exactly what you want in proper noun. In the history of clients, which company or which designer can say, oh, I've had this client who has told me exactly what he wanted in one go. So those kind of roles are not going anywhere, but things which are simple as standing in front of a camera and being sad. It also depends on your brand value as an actor, of course. Nobody's going to replace Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man. It's just not going to
Hmm.
happen. Tom Cruise and his Mission Impossible series, very hard to replicate him. And I think people love the actors. They don't love the mantle that they wear. And if you give Iron Man suit to somebody else, yeah, that's not gonna
Yeah, it's a very, very interesting time with a lot of this stuff and with AI. And I think you're right with the jobs it's taken. It is unskilled sort of white collar work right now. With a lot of, I think a lot of people that were a lot of copywriters, people that were like writing emails for businesses. That's like a side job.
happen. Yeah, I think
Um,
translators in the UN, these jobs can be taken away.
yeah. So if anything, a lot of those jobs will probably be eliminated. But at the same time, those people, there's other jobs that will be created. I
Yeah,
think eventually, I think it's a tool.
and actors can learn to be voice actors, right? Your voice
Yeah.
is still valuable, and AI replication is getting good. I mean, it's efficiency, it's streamlining the process, it is making easier for new people to come into productions. Earlier, if you want to have a movie, you need to have a budget of $200 million, $300 million. That's very difficult for new people to come in. Now that AI is here, it is going to make it possible for college students, finally the college students, to like 8 or 10 of them can contribute and create a movie. Maybe not as big as Hollywood, or something like the pilot episode of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia was shot on a smartphone. So maybe there will
Yeah.
be more creators. Uh, Although I don't like what is happening to these actors, but this is my personal bias. I always think entertainers have always been uh, overrated. I mean, real entertainers put effort into their craft, like George Carlin, like uh, Trevor Noah, John Oliver. Comedians are differently. If you look at people who look good,
Yeah.
that's not a skill. It's not a skill.
Yeah.
Um, oh, you're losing your job. What job? Describe your job in 3 words. Describe your job in 5 words or less to me.
I think they're saying that stuff to like try to appeal to like the average person, saying, "Hey, we're trying to help the people that are down and out." But no, you're right because the actors that are going to be hurt by that are they're doing it as just something extra to do. That can't be their mainstream job. You can't survive on like 3 grand a year in LA. That doesn't work.
Yeah,
You know.
the only reason
Um,
that these cities are expensive because people living in those cities make exorbitant amount of money for little work. That's
yeah.
There's no reason for that city to be this expensive other than the people living in it are making a lot of money which they should not be making. I'm not saying that I'm against that person's ability to make money, or that oh, this person should not be making money. I'm just saying maybe as a society, if we rethink our values and stop putting educators and entertainers in the same category, maybe I don't know, we won't have such an unequal society
Right.
which these woke people keep crying about all the time.
Well, that's interesting. I was just thinking about like if you want to like know how much money you need to make to like live in an American city, you can just go to that city's or that county's website and look up how much their teachers make because they we are paid just enough to like live in a place. They're not going to pay us more because you're not going to get rich, but you'll get enough to get by, and that sort of informs you like, all right, I need to make that much. I think that's a good gauge for cost of living. Like in LA, their teachers make a lot of money if they were living in Florida, but they live in California, and the house out there is like $1 million. It's like so absurd how expensive like California's gotten. But if you live out there, to you making like 300 grand is like, nah, that's middle class.
It's
If
not
you made
about how much you make, but how much can you save and still maintain your standard of living as it was.
Yeah, it's how much you're making also in context to everyone else around you. You know, if everyone's pulling in 300 grand, then you're just doing all right. So it's interesting to think about these things. Another interesting thing I think was with them using the scans of people, like who owns your image, right?
Yeah, what
Like
is
who owns your look? Does the company that takes that picture own it, or do you own it?
what
And
intellectual property? What is intellectual property in that regard? Yeah, that's a good question.
I think that's going to end up in the Supreme Court. I really do. Um, I think eventually an actor that's going to happen to some extra, and there some very smart lawyer will see a huge opportunity to get name value, right? Because I think sometimes these lawyers will take a case just to get name value so they can make more money from bigger clients that are richer. And I just think that one is just out there and eventually I mean, I'm not well versed in this entertainment law, but I would imagine that's not defined. You know, like who owns the image? Who owns your look? Right? Isn't that's sort of a weird thing to think about?
If I can find somebody with identical face as you, maybe an identical twin, and like there are people who look very identical. So,
Ooh,
I mean, one very dangerous aspect of it, which like just came to my mind, is the use of AI and like you've seen those AIs, right, which can like take 8 or 9 of your selfies and then now they have a structure of your face and they can like make you wear glasses and suits, change your clothes and whatnot.
I haven't used that, but that's I maybe I will look that up after this.
So there are these AI websites and applications which will ask you to submit 8 or 9 selfies of yours so that it can understand your facial features and then it can modify them to make them look however you want it to look. One very dangerous application of this is going to be actors and actresses, especially who have not signed up for explicit roles. And
What's that?
I would say it is going to be used to create pornography.
Oh yeah, man, we're entering such a weird time. Yeah, that's gonna be oh, it's gonna be used for all sorts of things. The amount of deep fakes
Yeah.
that are gonna be coming out,
I mean,
especially as we get here in America to our next presidential election. You know, that's gonna be something interesting,
I
right?
mean, but I don't get the concern of politicians is that, oh, this is going to take away the trust in public, the trust of public from the government. The public never trusted you in the first place.
That's also true.
You're not trustworthy. What makes you think
If
that you're trustworthy?
anything, like I don't know if you've ever heard the Trump tape where he was talking to this guy named Billy Bush,
In the bus?
where he was, huh? Yeah, in the bus,
Yeah.
where he was like grab him by the, you know what?
Yeah, I'm fascinated by the lack of public transportation in the US when the presidential candidate thinks a bus is a locker room. That tells two
um,
things. One, that Trump has never been inside a bus, and two, he has never been inside the locker room.
I can probably agree with both. Like the one locker room he's probably been in is a golf, like a golf locker room, and that's not really a locker room, right? That's I guess it is a locker room,
It's a
but it's
sauna.
really nice. Yeah, it's a sauna, you know. Um, yeah, like AI has a chance to really change a lot of things, and it's going to be interesting. But if anything, I think it'll allow a politician to like deny things, be like, "Oh no, that's a deep fake," when they actually did do something, right?
Yeah, I think this is one of those times where all our politicians have to be tech savvy. Because if the government is not at least on par, if not ahead of these private firms, universities, the new technologies that are coming out of defense manufacturers and these IT companies like Meta, like Google, and all those different companies like OpenAI, Bing, Microsoft. So if the government representatives, if the Supreme Court, if the law enforcement agencies are not just as well versed as these tech giants are, the public are going to be in a lot of trouble, especially uh, teenage and young females, because here in India, the amount of uh, harassment, online harassment that females have to face, and blackmailing which happens when somebody morphs your image into something very disturbing and threatens, oh, I'll put this online or I'll send this to your parents and something. If you don't do this. So people need to be educated about these things, and there have to be serious laws in place to to prevent such deep fakes, images or videos. And AI companies have to ensure that their uh, terms and conditions and user policy is very actively trying to curb pornography as strictly as possible.
Um, so how bad is it in India that because I heard some Indian American comedians talk about it, like just how intense like the cat calling can be in India, or like the way they describe it is like more like staring or
Yeah,
something. So like if you're like like an Indian woman and you're just like walking around the city by yourself, like what would like happen? Just people would be like harassing you, or like what would happen?
nothing like that in good cities. I mean, in the top 25, 30 cities of this nation, if you're in one of those, it's probably fine. Uh, Minor catcalling might be faced by foreign women uh, who visit tourist destinations. We are trying to curb it. We are trying to make the city as tourist friendly as possible. The entire nation. Uh, there is some nuisance because lack of sensitive training, lack of diversity. People grow up in all boys school. They don't know how to interact with the other gender, much less the human being. The sex ratio in India is very skewed. It's in some places it's as low as 700 females per thousand males. In all of the country,
Ooh.
it is 800 females to 1,000 males. So if you have a skewed sex ratio, the chances of people getting some are very less. So a lot of times, a lot of males have to look for partners strictly online, and then they DM unsolicited messages to a lot of anything with uh, two X chromosomes. Boys are going to be hounding over it. It's not as bad as it was 5 6 years ago. Uh, it's not 100% safe, I would say, but nothing. Hopefully, nothing bad physically will happen. Some catcalling, some whistling, some looks, some stares might happen if you're doing something outrageously different. Like I was talking about the metro, right? One of the most well-connected cities by the metro is New Delhi, the capital of India. So in that metro, I don't know why it is always Delhi Metro. So if you just type on Google Delhi Metro, you'll find lots of news articles covering females who were wearing swimsuits, uh, couples who were making out, and just a lot of weird things which were happening in Delhi Metro. So people were looking at them. One person clicked a photograph of that woman and uploaded a video of that to Twitter saying, "Is this normal? Do people do this?" And then people started trolling the woman, and some people accused the man that you have no right to make video of somebody without their consent. So no physical harm was done to that female. Uh, uh, it's weird. So if you're doing something very different, like wearing a swimsuit in public transportation, uh, I don't know what the legal side of those things is. It's strange. It's different. So people are going to look at you out of curiosity, uh, and out of the 100 people looking at you, maybe 8 or 9 of them have malicious intentions. The other are just curious. Why is this person wearing this? Uh, they'll probably laugh and move on.
Yeah, I could see that in a big city being an issue. Like where I'm from, that's normal, believe it or not, because but it's Florida, right? We got beaches, and
Yeah,
but even then, I would like even then I would like if I had a daughter or something, I would tell her to like cover up, like put something on, like if you're going on any public transportation. But I could see that like
I mean it's
being an issue,
have you seen those?
especially with
Yeah, yeah. Go on.
700 to especially I was just saying, especially like with 700 to a
1,000.
thousand
That's
ratio. That I mean, yeah,
it is
that's
improving.
the problem.
Fortunately for us, it is improving, and in the next 20 to 25 years, I think we are going to have 1,200 females per 1,000 males. So that is a good thing. the female ratio is rising, and I think it's a good thing. Uh,
So why did that ratio exist? Was it like people wanted males?
yes, because males stay in the family. You can also get a lot of dowry if you have a male child. So and even today, if you see the smallest child in India is a male. So people kept trying as long as it did not get that Y chromosome. Also, this brings me to a very interesting conversation. Like I was reading a lot about how gender reveal parties are starting forest fires and this and that. And I thought to myself,
Yes.
why don't I have gender reveal party in India? And then that's when I looked into laws, and it is forbidden by law to check the gender of the baby, to check the gender of the fetus when it is inside the mother's womb. It is
Really?
illegal. Yeah, no MRIs, no scans. You cannot have
Oh,
any scan of the fetus which reveals its gender
oh,
except for extreme medical cases because of something known as female infanticide. I don't know what to call it. So if
that just that that just clicked in my brain why that would be illegal. I'm like, why would that be illegal? And I'm like,
if
oh
people
no.
this was happening a lot between 1980s and 2011-12. In fact, that if people were finding out that they are having daughters, they would abort.
Mm. So like sort of similar to what was happening in China,
Yeah, yeah.
but way differently. Yeah, that's not a good thing. I can see why that's a law. That's a very good law because what ends up happening is what y'all are dealing with now.
There are some issues where it becomes the responsibility of the government to do the right thing and not appease everything that the society is doing. I mean, yes, it is a democracy. Yes, it is the voice of the people. Yes, people should have the right. But if people are stupid, it should be the responsibility of the government to be like, nah, I'm putting my foot down. No more stupidity. We are doing better. It is the responsibility of the government to make sure that this citizens aspire to be better versions of themselves, to be more human than on Neanderthal. So I think I support the UCC in that regard. Uniform Civil Code. India does not have that. I think we need to have a uniform civil code in this nation.
So in India, is there like when you get old in India, is there any type of like social security or pension that you get when you're older?
If you are a public employee, if you have worked in public sector or in defense, then you get pension. If you That's just 2 to 3% of the total jobs in this nation. So for the rest of you, the retirement, if you have some savings, if you have invested in some finance companies, then yes, there are some old age homes. There are some NGOs. Usually, old people are taken care of because they have a big social network. I mean, this currently the people who are 80, 90 years old in India, they have at least 3 to 4 to 5 sons and daughters. So they live in a joint family. They are taking care of their the newer generation, which is having a much smaller family. They are going to have some troubles. Either they have a retirement plan, either they have savings. They are eating off those returns. Otherwise, they'll rely on NGOs because their relationship with their children is not very good.
So I think in America we're sort of having a similar problem with. I mean, we get Social Security, but that's not. That's gonna end up maybe we'll see if that survives. But I was just thinking, like, why would that come around? Like that issue of wanting a male over a female, and it's because of that part, that security when you're older,
Status
right?
in the family.
Uh, yeah, or so it's some sort of monetary issue. So I was just thinking, like, as the like, what could the government do to like fix that? But that might be something you can just sort of nudge people into fixing. Um, I don't know. What are your thoughts? Like, how would you sort of alleviate that in Indian society? That idea.
There are some laws in place which says that division of property. I mean, since property is again distribution of property is a civil issue, and like I said, India does not have a uniform civil law on how things like marriages, divorce, and property distribution works. So for most of Hindus, uh, it is you cannot discriminate between property. If I have a son and a daughter, and let's say I have my net worth is let's say $1 million, everything that I own. So if I have to pass it on in my will, I cannot discriminate between my daughter and my son legally. There are certain loopholes, uh, which I can say, oh, I spent this much on her education, but this much on my son, so now I'm giving this to that. I'll have to justify my distributions, but by law, I have to give half a million to my son and half a million to my daughter by law. In other communities, they can do as they please because uh, no civil code, no uniform civil code. However, most Hindus don't do that also. Even before the distribution happens, the girl is not coerced, but it's like an understanding. Like, now you have a different. Once you're married, you'll have a different family. You'll get a lot from your husband's side, and we are giving so much in the dowry, and we are paying for your marriage and whatnot. So marriages are lavish. So the equivalent of that we'll give to our son, and as soon as we, as a father, if I'm giving half a million to you, half a million to you, then as soon as that transaction happens, you will have to sign another saying, okay, I don't want it, you can give this to my brother. So it runs in the family, I guess. But generally the males are the dominant ones. Generally properties are passed on male to male to male to male. If I were to solve this, I would say it's very difficult to become, I don't think it's the ideal way to say, oh, I know what you should do with your money, I know better. uh, but I think the best way is to educate people about gender sensitivity and economics in general. um, People in cities tend to be more liberal on these things. So if I could suggest something to my government, it would be that have a uniform civil code based on present day morals, values, and ethics and economic terms, and do not let these 65-year-olds orthodox uh, guardians or the big people in the house whose IQs are less than 80 decide how wealth is supposed to be distributed. The government needs to put their foot down, they need to be firm, but that is only possible if the people in the government are themselves educated in economics. Family laws need to be universal, firstly. So the first thing I would do is have a uniform civil code. I think for 10 years, the government should decide how the property will be passed on. I think 50-50 is a great way. Like, the number of children you have, it's going to be exactly equal. Whatever your net worth is, it will be equally divided amongst all your children for 10 years. And in those 10-15 years, I think the next generation will be educated enough to uh, understand it by themselves, and they will not need the stick of the government on their head to tell them what to do. I think they will make the right decision by themselves. But until then, the government needs to step in.
That's fascinating outlook. So do like a 10-year program that will hopefully get the job done for the next generation. That's a good outlook. That's
I
um,
think that's how all laws should be applied. Like, if you want to try something to solve a problem, okay, like I have a problem, wealth inequality amongst males and females. Okay, how do I fix this? Okay, I have one approach. Let's implement this for next 5-6 years. Let's see if we can see results. Okay, we're seeing results. Do we need more data? Yes. Extend that law 5 more years. Okay, do we have sufficient data? Yes. Now compare the two. Okay, this thing seems to work. Okay, will it work if we remove it? Try it. We remove it for 5 years. Okay. It's not working. It's not working. Put it back. Put it back. Okay, now it's working. Okay, remove it. Then simple, easy. I think.
that's a very pragmatic approach. What happens in America is we tend to do that. Well, not do that, but like put a law in place and then it gets stuck. Like welfare, for example. Um, Even though I actually think we should have it. But other laws, like them,
Patriot Act.
um, huh?
Patriot Act.
Say that again.
The Patriot Act. The one after 9/11.
Oh, yes, yes. So with that one should be repealed, but it won't.
Okay.
They said. So I guess that's the pitfall with trying to do that is there's just a chance that it gets stuck on the books. But no, the government likes that too much. They love the Patriot Act. It wouldn't surprise me right now if there's some special agent watching this CIA.
I think it's the
Anyways,
NSA.
NSA. There you go, NSA. Um,
I don't live in your jurisdiction. Yay.
well, they're seeing like a Florida to India conversation going on.
Oh
Maybe
yeah.
they're getting curious. But I mean, they can listen all they want, right? Like, who cares?
Maybe he'll get
Um,
educated.
right. But so I think it's a pretty rotten like law. Even back then, we didn't need it, and now we don't need it. Like, it just allows all this spying to occur, and I don't think a lot of people know how intense that gets. Like, how they can they basically already prosecuted a murder. Now, I'm not trying to justify murder, but um, you know, a guy I think killed his wife, and it was next to a Amazon Alexa that then recorded and called the cops on the guy. Which is like, okay, well, they got the murderer, okay, but it's like at what cost? And like, how much were they listening? How did that thing know to contact the police? It's like, it's that stuff that's getting sort of eerie. Um,
I mean, people are trading their safety for their privacy. I think Captain America Civil War discussed this issue.
yeah, it's and that's essentially the Patriot Act. That was supposed to be just for the war on terror,
Hmm.
and it's a way for our intelligence agencies to get a whole lot of information. Um, but I mean, people won't complain about that until it becomes a problem and they start to abuse it. So we'll see how this rolls out, but I guess that's the inherent problem with any government program is that it sticks around like longer than it's needed. Um, but we'll see what happens. What are your? I was just reading this article about India, and I was wondering if this journalist was biased, but they were talking about something called Hindu nationalism.
Okay. Uh,
What are your thoughts on Hindu nationalism?
it's a right-wing political point. It says that it not says anything. It's just Hindu nationalism is kind of a movement which like white people's patriotism. That's I think that would be the equivalent of it. Like American
Okay,
nationalism,
so it's
white nationalism. I think that's the race issue in US is very similar to religion issue in India. I mean, uh,
ooh, that's a good comparison.
so it as long as these people are not harassing people of other communities, uh, it 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 can turn out to be a positive movement. I mean, uh, revival of temples, uh, building infrastructure around schooling, education for Hindu children. Uh, I mean, it should not be exclusive to Hindu children. If that is the case, then it will create some issues. The excessive rise of it, I think what that is implying is the refusal to rent apartments to people of other communities. Housing societies are becoming very much religious centric. They will refuse people who eat non-veg, people who are not from their community, people who are not from their caste to live in the same housing society if the secretary does not want you to. Even if you own the house and you live in some other city and you want to rent that place to somebody else, the housing society people are going to bother you. Uh, so it's those kind of activities which do anytime it connects with economics. That's when my issue rises. Uh, Other than that, they are a bunch of internet people who are producing songs and videos of Hindu gods and goddesses. So I think promotion of Hinduism
Okay,
in general. Uh,
I really liked your comparison to white or Christian
yeah,
nationalism.
Christian nationalism.
Like,
Yeah,
I think it's with both the positives and negatives are very similar. That's sort of because I really did not know what it was like Hindu nationalism. I did not get it, and now like what you said makes a ton of sense with how
yeah. I mean,
our sort of right wing version is.
it's fine if you're standing outside of abortion clinics and saying, "Oh, please don't get an abortion. It's life." That's like you're standing there. You're standing. You're believing in your cause. But if you're a member of the KKK, yeah, that's
Yeah,
That's a problem. So that's the difference between believing in Christian values. So believing in Christian values, and that's
and yeah, it still can be an issue in the America with like what you were saying between like a housing authority and a member of another group like having issues. That can still happen with you know the locals and some like out of state diverse person. They can still run into some issues depending on where they try to live. We don't like to talk about it because in America we like to think that that doesn't exist, but I still see it occasionally.
I recently saw a movie about, I don't remember what was the name of the movie, but it was about an interracial couple moving into a new house, and the lady in front of them was Karen. I think the name of the movie was also Karen. So that white lady,
Karen.
yeah, I think that was the name of the movie. Let me check. I recently watched that movie.
Oh, if it's new, it's probably called Karen. That's funny.
Yeah, and so what this lady, this white lady who lives in front of their house does is that she points a CCTV camera at their house, calls the cops on them a couple of times. I mean, let me just check. 2021 film. Yeah, it's called Karen. It's a 2021 film.
Well, that's what you call an annoying white lady now, is a Karen. Um,
Okay,
so
it's 3.1 on IMDb, and this is the official description of the movie. A racist woman makes it her personal mission to displace the new black family that has just moved in next door to her. So I think Hindu nationalism is kind of similar to this. People are fighting battles which don't exist. There's something in Hindi known as Hindu Rashtra, which loosely translates to Hindu nation, and a lot of times some local political candidate will just stand on the stage and like, I will provide you a Hindu nation. Who demanded? Who asked?
so in India right now, who's considered the Brahmins?
Okay, so inside Hinduism, there are certain castes. Uh, it's similar to Catholics and then other Protestants, Christians, and like the types of Christians. So
Mm-hmm.
uh, back in the day, it was based on your occupation. So people in India, I think even 10 years ago, from 4,000 years ago to 10 years ago, if you have one particular occupation, you stay in that occupation generationally. Uh, the Brahmins were the people who were in charge of education, and they would live, they would go to forests and live inside those forests, so that they can detach themselves from worldly possessions. They would live off of not begging technically, but since they were educators, uh, parents would send their children to them in the forest to get education from them, and in return, they did not have a lot of wealth. They were not economists. They didn't deal in economics. They were for education. They gave education. They gained education. They distributed knowledge, and they made the living off of uh, donations from people. So that class, which was doing everything related to studies, was Brahmin. Uh, then it goes in a hierarchy. So the
Mm-hmm.
Brahmins were considered the top of the line. Like they are the most important people. Below them is the Kshatris. The Kshatris are the warrior class. So you have the education class. Now you have the warrior class. The warrior class consists of the nobles. They were the army generals, the kings, the rulers, the personnel in the army, those who could fight well. So if you imagine the structure of human body, the brains is the top level. So those are the Brahmins, the education. Then there are the arms meant to fight. Uh, then there were the merchant class, the class that creates products and distributes products. So the banyas, that is the mercantile class. And the last, the feet, those are the shudras, the dalits, the oppressed community, the minorities. They would do all the cleaning work, sanitation and hygiene work. So that is what the class system was, based on occupation. There were some social evils which then translated, which then later became very exclusive. So the Brahmins refused to teach people who were not Brahmins, and the Kshatris, the warrior class, refused to teach the arts of warfare and how to handle weapon to people who were not uh, equivalent, who were not from warrior class. So knowledge of the arts became restrictive, and so every time some community goes into isolationism, the craft does not develop much because you don't have a diverse set of people looking at it. So the educational greatness of India, which came through literature, through stories, through medication, all of that was concentrated, and it could not expand much. Uh, and so, and then the British came and they saw this, and they were like, okay, this is too messy for me to put my hands in. Uh, I'm just gonna stay out. Uh, you grow opium, you go indigo. Rest I don't know. So the warrior class also had some laws which said some religious belief, which was you don't cross rivers, do not cross rivers. But they needed men to fight World War I, so they made the Indians cross river. And through time, as social classes evolved, now we are heading towards plurality, where things like gig economy are a thing. People do not stick to a single occupation. You can change your occupation now. So there were some caste reformers, some leaders, a lot of social activism. Like I'm oversimplifying it tremendously. It was
Hmm. I'm sure it's very nuanced.
yeah, it was a struggle for uh, the people of classes of the except every class except the top three. That's like a very minor section. So the people who were educators, they are. I'm told. I don't know the truth of it. I'm told that they were exploitative. They would exploit the people of lower classes. Uh,
Hmm.
so India has a form of affirmative action now for these categories of people who belong to scheduled tribe, scheduled caste, and other backward classes. They gave them reservations in government jobs to allow for their economic upliftment because they were not given access to knowledge and information and trade school and warcraft to become employable members of the society. And so currently we are headed towards a very plurality driven economy where the same person does newspaper distribution in the morning, so he's a distributor, he's merchant class, but he's not producing that newspaper because supply chain and things are different. So the same person who, let's say I'm a designer, so I'm designing the newspaper, so I become the producer class, and then I'm teaching design, so now I'm the educator class, and then I'm playing sports, so I'm the warrior class, and then at the same time
Okay.
I'm doing some other gig work. Let's say I'm doing somebody's hair. Let's say I work in a hair salon, so now I'm a member of the lower class because I'm serving somebody else. I'm a servant. So the same, now it is heading towards plurality. So uh, as newer generations come up, as plurality, gig economy, things like this change, I think the social norm of this will also change. Unfortunately, caste in India is still a reality in some cities, except the top cities. Caste-based discrimination is uh, it is happening. I'm not going to say it is common, but
Hmm.
it is happening. There are still reports of it. It will go away, just like racism. It will go away. But
Yeah.
caste is deeply rooted in our history. It was based on your occupation, but since there is a lot of fluidity in occupation, economics is changing, capitalism is evolving, it will go away. It's not going to stay for long. Uh, but yeah,
I,
it
I
is.
I just I just remember seeing. I saw some video of a politician just really complaining about the Brahmins, and I'm like, okay, I don't know anything about this. I need to ask Malay. I don't know what a Brahmin is. So now I know. Now it was probably some guy that was part of a minority or something
Their
that was
complaints
just
are not
like,
their complaints are not totally wrong. Uh, there have been cases. I mean, the Mahabharata, which is like the Bhagavad Gita, is an extract from Mahabharata, and it is one of the most beautiful and mythic, legendary novels ever written. So even in that story, uh, the most talented prince uh, who wanted to challenge Arjun. Arjun is the protagonist of Mahabharata. So he wanted to
mm-hmm,
challenge him to a battle, and for that he wanted to learn how to use a bow and arrow. He wanted to be an archer, and so the story is of Karn. Karn was another prince, but since he he was born into royalty, but his mother could not accept him. So it's a long story, but he ends up being
Yeah.
raised by step parents, which were not of a higher class. They were of the servant class. So the best teachers, Dronacharya was the teacher who taught the five princes, including Arjun,
Hmm.
the protagonist. So that teacher refused to teach this other person because he was not from the warrior class. So
Oh,
he had to lie about his class in order to get learning from another teacher who also would not teach anybody from other than his warrior class. So yeah, when
wow.
so it is deeply rooted.
Yeah,
It is
yeah, that
interesting.
is
I'm not
deeply rooted.
denying it.
No, it's interesting. It's fascinating how you can control class through the control of information. Like that's um it's interesting, right? Like, and I don't think America or any American should ever like be critical of other countries because of our own history, but also we've been around for like 200 and something years. You know, this goes way, India goes whoo, way back.
Yeah,
And
it's. I wouldn't say
I,
they shouldn't be critical. If they have read the material, if they've gone through it, it's okay. It's okay to have, like I said, the world needs to know about India, and India needs to know about the world. And the only way to have that is to have good constructive dialogue, acknowledging the nuances, reading through history, uh, combing through evidences together. Maybe an American perspective on this can say, "Oh, we've had a similar problem, and these are the solutions that we tried. Maybe try that." And the government will be like, "Okay, sure, why not? We can try that in one of the states, and if it works, we can increase the sample size." I mean, uh, that's how problem solving works in a connected world. I think the Ministry of External Affairs should establish cultural ties much strongly with USA, with Southeast Asia, and discuss certain issues. And I think India as a nation can benefit a lot from the perspective of strictly capitalist nations, because most of the caste reform actually comes from economic reform.
okay,
It's like it depends on the intention. If a person of American descent is reading about India just to be critical of it, then it's wrong. I mean, it depends on intention. If he's generally curious
right,
about
yeah, like
things.
if there's some good old classic American racism in there or not. Um, no, I agree. I agree. I think getting to know India is going to be really important moving forward. It always seems like all of our attention's always on China when that's sort of a silly thing. When it you have India that I just think India is it's going to be very. I think it's going to be a lot more powerful than China, like within 20 years. Um, I actually I think a lot of companies are moving into India right now
Yep.
um, to build industrial plants. Like there's a good from everything I'm reading. I read a lot of geopolitical stuff. It seems that China's really starting to struggle,
Yeah, with
and
their
India
housing market collapse, and I think after COVID, it just started its downfall. COVID was the
it's getting
main.
bad. And it seems India is starting to do pretty well.
India,
Um,
Vietnam, Malaysia, Singapore, Thailand. These countries are going to do well with the collapse of China, because foreign investment is going to be booming. Um, I think right now is a bad time for everyone economically because of the Russia-Ukraine war. As soon as the war ends, uh, it will be good all over again. That's just my
oh,
opinion.
I hope so. And I think it's important for American students to know about India. I mean, if you're going to, you know, be educated, you have to know about one of the biggest nations in the world, right?
Yeah, it's currently the most populated country currently.
Yeah, world's biggest democracy.
Also,
So,
that
and I think it's still a mystery to a lot of Americans. Like they view India as like the place with Hindu temples. You know, I don't think they realize
yoga
how
temples
many people it is, huh?
and yoga.
Yeah, and there you go, yoga. They don't even think Hindu. They don't even know what Hindu temples are. It's yoga. They think yoga and curry, the two things when they think of India. And I mean, that's not bad things. I'm just saying, like, I think they could be almost fooled into thinking it's just a mis like sort of like a mystery, nation full of like Hindu rituals and stuff, like almost like the Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom
Yeah,
outlook, which is obviously not India, like nowadays, and like it's. I think it's just going to be important for students to know what's going on in India because that's going to be a major player in the future.
yeah,
So
and
I think you're right.
I think as more and more CEOs of big tech companies are Indians, uh, you will see a lot of Indian influence on social media. Not to mention, since we have a huge population, uh, number game is always going to be skewed in our favor. Our cricketers, our actors are going to have a much more stronger following on social media. Uh, YouTube already has like T series is already the most subscribed channel on YouTube. Uh, so I think our population has a huge potential. It has a huge demographic dividend. We have the youngest population on earth and the biggest set of young people on earth. Uh, it's a huge opportunity if any company is looking for any person, front end developer, back end developer, management, legal counsel, any role. In India, there are 10,000 people ready to work. You just need to spend a little bit on their training, maybe 3 months, 4 months of worth of training, and that employee is going to be very loyal to you for at least 10 years. Uh, it's a huge market, it's a huge potential. And I mean, on personal level, I can see economic growth everywhere. I recently moved into this new house. We have a new MacBook M. We have a new MacBook M2, the latest one. We have a new refrigerator,
Oh, awesome.
new electronics. I mean, we are consuming uh, everything. So yeah, I can see economic expansion in my personal life, and I can see economic expansion on a national scale as well. Uh, I think after the Russia-Ukraine war, India needs to appease to the West because everybody knows that the stance we have taken is pro-Russia. That there is no neutrality in times of oppression.
Well, right now in America, there's a rising Tucker Carlson, sort of the leader of it, um, because there's people like what you just mentioned with economic expansion, and that's awesome. That's awesome. I think a lot of Americans aren't seeing that right now with inflation, even though we are experiencing pretty good economics. It's just with such high demand in the housing and car markets, people are just seeing those prices go up. So they feel like no one's helping them. So why do we got to continuously send billions over to Ukraine, which it's also on the government and our president not selling it appropriately, like why we're doing this. Like I've looked into it and I'm actually for that, but they're not explaining it why it's important,
You guys are
right?
doing it because it's the right thing to do, because it needs to be done. And the reason we are not doing
And
it is because we cannot afford to. We have
yeah,
1 billion people to feed, and
yeah,
if we do the
you
morally
need
right thing,
oil.
we'll go broke.
Yeah, you need oil, you need grain. It's just two different economic interests from two, different nations. We don't want Russia to take over Eastern Europe again. Um,
Because it's clearly the wrong thing. Putin is acting like a man child here. He's acting like a toxic ex-boyfriend towards Ukraine, and it's the if India was a very wealthy nation with all of our problems completely solved, then we could be morally righteous. Say, oh, this is bad. We are reliant on Russian oil. There's no
yeah.
denying it. I wish we were
Oh,
India.
I'm not blaming India for any of this. Like y'all have so many people, and you need oil, right?
Yeah,
Um, and America can play this game because we're sitting on a lake of oil. It's yeah. I don't begrudge India for any reason, like for that. With America and well, with Russia, it's I think Americans make the mistake of thinking it's the Soviet Union, like because that's our old school enemy. When it's not, it's the most capitalist gangster nation now. Like it's when you really look into Putin, he's a gangster. He's like a mafia,
and like all the
and
oligarchs. I think
yeah, it's absurd.
I think America didn't ever come out of the Red Scare It was the Red Scare for the Soviet Union. Now it's for China. It never came out of that sense of vulnerability that, oh, something is happening. I have to.
Russia is always been our boogeyman, you know, and they're trying to turn China into that new boogeyman, right? Like that will, and a lot of it's propaganda to get people to pay for defense and not mind that they're like half their tax money is going into war. Um, but Russia seemed to work. I don't know if the China thing will work. We'll see. Um, but yeah, like, and but one thing I think to remember is the corruption too of everyone involved with Ukraine, Russia, and like, so I think Americans are very propagandized right now over that war. But regardless, I think it's a good thing that we are supporting Ukraine. It's just, yeah, like you said, with India, it's really, I mean, it's really tough to survive in this world without oil.
Yeah,
You just can't do it.
like our policy ever since our first Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru till now, it has always been of non-aligned movement. Uh, they created the third
That's the
rail.
best way to do it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we've always been non-aligned, and with foreign relations, it's always not my monkey, not my circus. It's that mentality. I mean, yes, is it
I
true?
think that's a very smart method. Like, just stay neutral. I mean, America can be very dramatic. So,
I mean,
um,
I noticed this with a lot of American teenagers as well, and with lot of shows and Hollywood in general, is that if you just apply these principles of stoicism, not just stoicism, it's like not my monkey, not my circus, people would stop getting offended for every single thing. Everyone
yeah.
is getting offended on every. This is coming to India. That is what one of my juniors, female, probably 17, comes up to me and one other juniors, which I'm talking, two boys are talking about stuff, about stadium and whatnot. This girl just comes up
Hmm.
and says, okay, I hate these patriarchy and shit. They think females are only good for some things. Oh no, I want to do this, I want to do that. Oh, oh. You tell me, Malay, is that right or wrong? Like, and I made a joke of it, right? Females are good at a lot of things. I need one to wash my dishes, do the clothes. I'm making a joke. I'm a student. This person just gets so mad at me as if I'm responsible for all the patriarchy in the world. You're 17. You're 17.
That's a little bit ridiculous. But that same thing would happen in America if you did that. Like, it's, I don't know if it's the internet's influence or it's just our culture. Um, but that's not a bad joke. Like, that is just a misogynistic joke. But if it was obviously you were joking, who cares, right? Like, it's a joke.
I mean, people are ready to. I think what has happened is ever since the emergence of social media, people have become immune to a lot of stimuli. So now people just want to feel something. They want to feel any emotion, be it rage, happiness, excitement, fear, anything. They're craving for any kind of feeling. And so what content does is that it shows you content that will trigger something. That stimuli will trigger something. And if it's not triggering something, there will be some content which will make you think that the content that you have just watched is supposed to trigger something. So now you're
Mm,
getting triggered by that thing, and every time you watch something, you get immune to
yeah.
it. So now you need something more extreme, something more extreme, something more extreme.
Yeah, I think social media is a really strong propaganda tool to, and I don't think governments have even figured out how to use it yet. So that might be something scary in the future, right?
Remember what I said about your lawmakers and judiciary, and they should be ahead of the curve. They should be ahead of society.
Right?
They
Yeah.
should be at par with universities and tech companies. That is not happening. So
No, it's
what is the general consensus of teenagers in US about Musk's takeover of Twitter?
so with Twitter, most teenagers probably don't use it. If they do, it's just to follow big accounts like a Musk. They don't seem to mind it that much. The people that mind it are people that are politicos or people in politics. Um, Not that many people are on Twitter. The people on Twitter are just the important people in America. Like it's a very class based thing where you have like 2% of America on it, but that 2% is all the journalists, politicians. Actually, I think it's probably more than 2%. It's probably like 15, but the people that are really active seem to be, it's like a news service almost. And I think Musk takeover is a good thing because it was able to shine some light on just how much involvement the government was having with some of these companies. Um, but it really ruffled a lot of feathers, which is really interesting to me because I never considered Twitter that big of a deal. Like it only became a huge deal because of Trump, right? And Trump's tweets. And it seemed in like popular culture it took over from Facebook as like the important app. I think eventually it might, if Musk didn't do what he did, it probably would have lost its status eventually, I think. But it's interesting. So I think what they think, they don't, they're all about TikTok. They are the TikTok generation. They don't seem to be on Twitter that much, but any kid that does talk about it seems to like it. But they tend to be Musk fans. They're not a Musk fan. They're not on Twitter. They're probably everyone's on Instagram.
Oh,
That
how is Threads doing in US?
so that came out this summer. So I haven't really seen students using it yet. Like like our school, our new school year starts in like 3 weeks or 2 weeks, and so I'll know a little bit more. But I think one reason it did so well is so many American students are on Instagram,
Yeah, it's very easy to
and
use.
that's yeah, and um, it's TikTok and Instagram seem to be the two big dogs, and like with TikTok, I don't know, TikTok's a little bit silly to me, but it's important. Um, with just how many kids watch this thing.
Short form video is, like I said, it's easy to consume, palatable, just swipe impulsively. It's very easy. Like about Twitter, I got to know about censorship on Twitter when Jordan B. Peterson made a video about his tweet being removed about a plus sized model. So my interest in Twitter peaked about that time. Okay, see, because the way I saw that entire issue of banning, like, I don't think that every single thing that Jordan Peterson says is right or correct or morally right or should be taken at face value. No, I don't like everything that Ben Shapiro says. I don't like everything that Tucker Carlson says. But I stand with their freedom to speak.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I agree.
And
I think the Musk takeover is a good thing.
yeah, I mean, let's see. I'm still skeptical of that, but let's see. I mean, with with Peterson, I mean, if the most common argument against that tweet was, oh, if she's a plus size model, if she's if she's on any magazine cover or whatnot, uh, who are you to call her ugly? Who's the magazine to call her beautiful?
Yeah.
If you have $1 million company catering to audiences on an open level in a magazine, oh, this person is beautiful, and I say, no, she's ugly. How is your adjective to one human being important and freedom of speech, but my adjective to that same human being is hate speech?
I think most Americans would probably agree with you on that. Like, I just think some people get mad to get up mad. I think people, I call it utopia vision
Hmm.
that some people get stuck in when they're young. I got stuck in it for a little bit, where you have this picture of a perfect world in your brain where everyone's happy, you're perfectly happy, everyone's perfectly happy, no one's offended. And we can achieve that if we just do the right things to the government, because that's all of us working together, right? Like that's the mentality of like a democratic government. We're all working together in harmony but it's leaving out all of these important things called individual differences and differences of opinion. And so they don't factor that in, and they get upset over because they see someone as like maybe an obstacle to this perfect world that can be so easily achieved. But as they grow older and get more experience in reality, they'll realize, oh, this perfect world's never going to happen. And people have differences of opinion, and that's okay. I think it's almost an age issue
Yeah.
at this point with the people getting offended. It's, and I don't want to not make this sound the wrong way, but I almost think it's like a maturity issue. Like, have you never been out in the real world and seen how like just how horrible things could be, and you're upset at Jordan at a psychiatrist saying a plus size model shouldn't be the SI swimsuit model of the year? It's like, who cares? If you really care that much about it, go volunteer at a food shelter, at a food bank,
Yeah.
and help people out. Like, if you really want to make a difference, yelling and screaming on Twitter doesn't do anything. It's just this weird release in your brain, right? To like win at some stupid, silly game you're imagining in your head. I don't know.
Yeah, I guess the maturity issue also comes from the fact that seriousness, like characteristics like seriousness, academia, intellectualism, uh, things that revolve in grounded, hardcore STEM fields, they are undervalued. They are no longer appreciated. Um, it's all about how casual you can be with your work. And I get it. And making jokes at the workplace is fine. Like I just talked to you about it. I like making jokes, but when it comes on account of seriousness and the ability to work in a group towards a common goal, uh, it is seemingly missing from a lot of teenagers, including myself. So I would rather, like, this is one change which I've noticed in myself in the last 1 month, is that I would shut dialogue with a person so quick right now if they say something monumentally stupid. Instead of looking at it, okay, I come from a place of privilege, maybe I know this because of my education, that okay, this thing is wrong, but this person does not have that privilege, maybe he thinks that way. Maybe if I have a conversation with him, I can open up his worldview. This was me 1 month ago. Now I'm like, nah. Mm-mm. I had empathy for the people who were stupid. Now I don't have empathy for the people who are stupid and are proud of it. So that is one difference, and I think it is because of that, to a lot of extent, that people uh, in general lack discipline, lack self restraint, lack traits like seriousness, accountability, professionalism in the workplace. If you have casual Fridays all all the time during a week, you're not going to get any serious work done. And that is why Asians are outperforming people in STEM fields all across the globe. I'm not saying we are the best at what we do, we carry a lot of childhood trauma, but some traits like seriousness, accountability, maturity, you know, mental stability, that needs to be incorporated in people who are impulsive even to the age of 21, 22, 23. They're highly impulsive.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Well, I mean, something Jordan Peterson said was, how he stopped people protesting his speaking engagements at universities?
Yeah.
He scheduled them for 8 in the morning because he knew no one would be awake at a college that would protest at 8 a.m. And he was right, which is that tells me enough about the people protesting, like how their seriousness, like you were saying. If they're really that passionate about an issue, if I was that passionate about an issue, that time wouldn't matter, right? But most speaking engagements are 8 p.m., not 8 a.m. So they're up and about, but 8 a.m. and no one shows up is very fascinating. It shows me a lot about what's really going on. And like you said, yeah, very impulsive. That's a good way to describe it. Very impulsive, very emotional, lack of, I think, a lot of lack of like just thinking, and if you really have that big of a problem with someone, you should be asking them questions, not screaming at them, and or if you really want to save their soul. I see a lot of Christianity in this stuff, by the way. I view it as very Puritan. This idea that they don't believe what we believe. They are evil. Like next thing you know, they're gonna be trying to be like burning Jordan Peterson alive. Like he's a witch, burn him. It's really weird to me because that's another thing I've been noticing about America is even though all these people are running around screaming that they're atheists, they're acting like the Pilgrims and like the Salem witch trials. It's very weird. I don't know if you can just erase religion out of your culture and just say, "Well, I'm an atheist now." It's like, are you? I don't think. I mean, one, that's a weird thing to me to go around bragging about that. But two, if you're gonna say that, you should really try to act like it, and they don't. It's very fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, acting morally virtuous, this entire attitude of holier than thou, it stems from religion. So,
Yeah,
uh,
it's. I don't think we really in America have reckoned with how ingrained we are with Christianity and how much that is like just created our whole culture. And even when people just try to say, "Oh no, I'm not this or that," it's like, well, yeah, but you're still that. Like you can't erase that,
even in
you know?
mainstream media, even from people who try to act left leaning, including Mr. Peterson, when he said, I recall he said something about, okay, he was talking about Pride Month, and he said, like, I'm not in support of Pride because Pride comes before a fall, maybe as it says in the Bible, and people were like, yeah, the Bible, yeah, yeah, because that is where we take all our social references from. Yeah, that is what makes our policies. Yeah, the
Yeah.
Bible. Yeah, that's this guy is a professor in a university. Oh my god, and his source is the Bible. My god,
hmm Yeah.
he loves
It,
lobsters
it,
way too much. Like he's obsessed with lobsters. I'll give him that.
oh, he's a weird guy. He's interesting. He's an interesting dude.
I don't
I've read his books.
12 rules for life.
Um, he's gotten a little bit too right wing recently, but he's not wrong with some of the stuff he says. It's
Yeah,
just I don't. I think he almost trolls people on purpose now and does half the stuff he does to get people to get his name out there.
to
Almost,
stay
it's almost like
relevant,
ad.
to stay relevant as a brand. I mean, I agree with his freedom to speak. I may not agree with what he has to say, but I agree
Mm-hmm.
that he should have the space to say it.
Yeah. Um, it's like the backlash to him is. I mean, I get with some of his recent statements, but like the original backlash to him was really weird to me because there's a large segment of disenchanted males in America. It's and it goes to like people all the way up to my age, like people in their 30s, um, where they don't do anything, they don't work. They have found a way to like grift off of someone where maybe they have a girlfriend they live with or wife, maybe they live with their parents still, maybe
Basement.
I don't know, they're somehow surviving. They don't have a job. They play video games and smoke dope all day. And he's helping those guys, get back out into the world and improve themselves. Those are the same guys that were doing these shootings at schools and stuff, the same segment. So to help that population is really important because no one else was reaching them or doing it. So that's where I think he shouldn't be censored, even if he says atrocious things. It's overall a net positive for society if he's trying to help. If he's somehow using that to reach people that are down and out, like I think there's a mental health crisis caused by social media in America that's pretty profound right now that we won't know about until like decades from now. Sort of the fog of war is currently happening. Um, it's interesting, but I think people get really upset with him over the prominence he earned through trying to help with that. So if that makes any sense.
Yeah. So,
He,
what are the most? What would you say, as per your understanding as an adult and as a teacher? what are the three most popular, not serious, popular issues amongst American teenagers between the age of 17 and 19?
So where I teach at, I get a mix of both conservative and liberal students, and it's really hard to tell the difference between who is who, right? And I've made the mistake of, so I try not to include politics in my teaching. I try to be apolitical, but um, it's either going to be Republican viewpoints or Democrat. And if it's Democrat, I would say number one right now and is the issue of gender. That's the number one issue, and it's
That's not.
and
How
then
is
the
that
number
so?
two would be race, and number three would be military. Um, but people are either so turned off by the gender discussion that they just despise it. They're like, who are these people complaining about this? And oh, I'm so tired of it. Or they're 100% for it. And, or they're somewhere in the middle, right? It's this really weird, I'm going to call it weird. It's this really, I'm going to say interesting social movement that's occurring.
So how
And it's,
often, like, how often would it happen that if some male, I don't know if I can call them that anymore, says, "Oh, I'm
you can
all,
still call
I'm all for this moment," and the moment he says, "Okay, I'm all for this," some other guy from the classroom yells, "Simp."
It all depends on the personalities involved. I would say it doesn't happen a lot, maybe once or twice a year. It just depends on the personalities involved, but that does happen. You know, it's I will say this: it's mainly females that are running this operation, and the males right now just most of them have one no part of it, and they're just sort of quiet, and they don't know what to say or they don't want to offend anyone. But you will get that one dude who will say simp or something like that, and I have to stop myself from laughing at that, right? Because I can't be laughing at what he just said, even though it's really funny. Um, and a lot of students are going by like, there's a lot of female students going by different names, and I'm fine with that. It's in Florida that's getting a little because they're passing laws against that. Like teachers can't call students by different names. I don't know how you pass that law, but it's a thing. Um, but it's interesting because it's mainly a female thing. So this next school year is going to be really interesting because we have all these new laws that DeSantis passed involving all this stuff. Um, and I'm teaching sociology. The last teacher dropped it because of these new laws. So when they asked like who would take it, I'm like, I'll take it because I almost like the challenge.
Yeah, it's
So
fascinating because the way I see American teenagers or American classrooms in general, any classroom, be it college or be it a school, they are intellectually very violent. Every person has an idea, every person is opinionated, and they are not scared to voice that opinion. And the second they voice their opinion, there is some other person who's ready to challenge that opinion with everything that he has got. And at the end of that class, these people are still friends. They're having the lunch together, they're playing basketball together, but they challenge your ideas intellectually very violently.
well, yes, I would agree, except for that last part of them being friends. What I'm seeing more and more is they'll just go their own way. They won't talk to one another. I almost want them to like. I would say at the start of all this, like probably during COVID or maybe before it, that was true about them staying friends. More and more recently, it seems like they don't. It's becoming more partisan. It's becoming more divided. and that's where things start to get ugly. So I'm hoping I'm wrong in my observations in that I do see more kids stay friends. But it'll be interesting to see what happens this year with all that. How is that in India?
Uh, a lot of people don't have political opinions. If they have it, they will not voice them if they're intelligent. Uh, there are a lot of politically dumb people in India who do not understand this concept of nuance, and so it's a big turn off to even indulge in a conversation with them. I think I was talking to this one person. Like I was just sitting there in the cafeteria, and this there are some people around me, and some dude just sits next to me, and we were talking, and he was a friend of one of my acquaintances, so I didn't know him directly. He said something along the lines of, "Oh, these Western teenagers, they are they're doing intercourse as young as 12. They don't have manners. They are all day, any day. They're just doing intercourse. They do nothing." Tell me the name of 11 states in the US. And this guy looks at me. I'm like, that I don't know, but I know that they do have sex all day. Are you a veg man? What are you counting their condoms? How? What is the state? And
So he was saying that teenagers in the U.S. that's all they were doing,
yeah,
or just in it.
I think that's the general understanding of the West for people who have no idea about
Yeah,
sex.
because if anything, that rate that's plummeted. Like teenagers now are having less of that than ever. It's really weird.
I mean, this person cannot point the Pacific Ocean on a map. He cannot spell Mississippi.
So where do you think that idea came from?
It's a very conservative standpoint on India. Uh, in India, very common that oh, we are the purest society in the world because we don't have sex. We just have we don't have sex. We have children. So in India, when you ask
That's
somebody,
funny.
you don't ask somebody how many times you have had sex. You ask how many children do you have. So I think that idea that having sex is virginity is something pure. I don't know where his ideas come from, but I think, and I had to explain since I was free. I had to explain to this person, you're wrong, and even if you were right, think about this. If all your basic needs are met, if at 14 years of age you know that you are good for life, you will have social benefits, you have a skill you're working on, it will give you rewards. It is okay to look for a partner. It is okay to look for sexual compatibility. If the law in your state states that you can give consent at age of 16, you can do it, and whatever the other person is doing, it has nothing to do with you. Your sense of morality does not apply to somebody who's 10 and a half hours behind you in a time zone.
Yeah, right.
You're not, you're in a tier 3 college.
That's interesting.
Like, it's funny how opinionated these people are. Completely unaware. Journalism students. I recently had my exams. So like one of these guys, a lot of guys, they just come up to me and say, oh, just tell me something which I can write because I'm one of the academically good students. In like I come among the top 10 academically good students.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, we recently got our results as well.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I got an
So you're top 10?
I think so. I got an 8.8 out of 10 CGPA.
Oh, congratulations.
Thanks. So yeah, we were talking about this, and this guy asked me, okay, there's this question about how media's role has evolved during wartime. I want you to tell me what can I write about it. So I was telling him about the Vietnam War and how it was the first war to be broadcast on television, how the cultural shift during 1960s, make love not war, started trending, and how media's depiction of war crimes changed the perception in the US and how things were happening. And he says, I did not understand a single word you said. Why are you so dumb? How can somebody have an intellectual conversation with you? See, that's where my problem. I'm not saying I'm better than everybody else. That's not what I'm doing. It's just that if you want to talk about any issue, for example, Let's take any case study in particular. Let's say female rights. Let's say voting rights for female between 1645 and 1852. Let's take that for example. And some guy, unironically, will have the opinion, woman. Are you dumb? Are you so incapable of having a serious conversation at the age of 21? And that is what most of Indian teenagers are about. You cannot have intellectual conversation with them. They just don't have that in them. It's unfortunate, but it's true.
That just might be a teenager problem around the world. Um, I would say in America, it depends on the issue
Okay,
and
here's
what
an
issue,
interesting thing.
whatever is trending on TikTok,
So I'll
they'll
just
be passionate.
here's an interesting thing. How many students of your class can name all 50 states with their capitals?
Ooh, I would say without their capitals, I would say most students would know all the states. But the capitals, no, that would get almost all of them. Like that's almost a go-to I use sometimes to like to see like just to test some kids. But um,
In India, there are only 28 states now and 8 union territories. So, in a class full of journalism students, final year, out of 74, I think less than 25 will be able to name all 28 states with their capitals.
mm, that's at the university.
That's at the
Um,
university.
I mean, with journalists, they need to know that stuff, right?
A lot needs to be done. I mean, I was so disappointed. Like, I almost had an argument with one of my very close friends on the last day of my exam. The last exam was about research paper, and I'm very serious about academia. That is one of the that is my favorite subjects. So it was about research and how research paper are written. What is the meaning of? There were two questions. One was about what is the importance of review of literature, and second one was something else. I'm writing my answer, and cheating in India is so common, even at university level, that teachers just let us cheat. They don't intrude at all. Just don't intrude. So
mm,
a lot of times the person sitting next to me says, oh, "Can you help me out?" And I'll be like, "I'm writing. See and write. Don't talk to me. Don't speak. I'm writing. You see and you write. I don't care. Just don't bother me." And so I started writing, and the person behind me, she's a very good friend of mine. She's a very good friend of mine. So she just finished her paper, and she knows it has no consequences. Like, everybody will be passed. Nobody is ever failing. But I am passionate about it, so I'm writing a big answer because I want to write. I like writing, and this person just comes up to me in the middle of an exam hall. She got up from her seat, comes up to me. There are two invigilators in the hall, and she said, "That's it. How much will you write? Just pack it up. Come, let's go." I'm like, I'm not on a picnic. This is an exam hall, and the invigilators are like, why do I care?
oh my god,
It's it's bad.
yeah, but just I think you're doing the right thing with your focus on doing your best, writing out. I mean, you're writing that out for yourself. Even if your administrators are, thinking about whatever else and they're eating food and they're just whatever, who cares? If your friends want to leave, I mean, you handle that well because, I mean, you want to get, and people like when you're young, you don't realize. I wish I would have realized this more when I was younger. Like the value you get out of education of what you put into it. And like putting as much as you can into it and getting what you can out of it personally. It's not being selfish. It's you're like improving yourself and you're getting your money's worth too. Um, so and if that's important to you, your friends will understand. It's
Yeah,
you're getting the value of what you should be, and if everyone else is not doing that and you are, you just found something that's very valuable, which is a leg up over everyone else. Um,
I think it's also
you
about
know,
associations, like the kind of associations you make. Uh, they will define you as a person. I mean, When I'm like right now, I'm interviewing for a lot of companies. I'm looking for internships, and I spoke to my previous employer, who's like very generous with me. He's helped me a lot. He has made me so much more better for the market, and he told me that you want to apply as a graphic designer is fine. I want you to take a more dynamic role, which involves much of human skills, because I can literally take any person from the street and make them a better graphic designer than you in 3 months. That is my guarantee. But I cannot make them a better human than you can be, even if I teach that person for 20 years. So if you take this challenge, if you take this dynamic role, you'll be a better human being. You'll be a much more better human being by the end of it. And I said, okay, fine, I'll do it. I'll take much time. And I did. I took a role in managing clientele. I would take feedback from the client. I would give it to the design team. Design team would create something that I would negotiate with the clients, and I would help them directly. And so it gave me a fresh perspective on how important human skills are and how
Oh
important
yeah.
your associations are. So the people you associate yourself with, they define your the quality of your vocabulary, uh, the ability of your problem solving. And I think this is a lesson I learned the hard way, is that if some person is always looking for conflict, even in places where there isn't one, that person has got no work to do when he gets home, and you do. So don't
Yeah.
don't be associated to people who are actively seeking out conflict or are actively seeking out things to do because they're bored.
Yeah. Yeah. You want to try to avoid dramatic people that are causing problems when it's not needed. There's enough problems in the world. You don't need anyone inflating issues. Um, all right. Well, I think that's a good spot to end this little
Yeah,
conversation.
yeah.
Um, I'm glad you're doing well in school, man.
Thank you,
Also, I like the blue streak in your hair. Matches your
thank you
shirt.
so much. I'm getting a lot of compliments for my hair.
Yeah, it looks good.
Thanks.
Is that popular in India right now?
Uh,
Like doing colors like that?
Not really. It's not about any. It's not a trend or something. It's not for any cause. I just
Oh, it's just about that's cool, cool, man. Yeah, be original, man. Be unique.
just
That's awesome.
I liked it, so I got one.
It works. It works.
And schools did not
So,
allow this. So when you are in school till 12th standard, you're not allowed to color your hair, have your nails, or any kind of beard or anything basically. So
so if you were to walk into school with that, what would they do?
uh, they would cut your hair if you're a student there.
They would just come up and snip, snip.
They would snip it. If you are a student there, they can do it. It has happened. I mentioned this in my book, that reinforcement of discipline like this, it was very common in the Carroll barracks of US, and that is where India took its inspirations from and formed it in India. Luckily, there are children who are recognizing that this is bull. I can do whatever I want with my appearance, and my education has something to do with it, and parents are supportive of it. So newer laws are being implied. Teachers who are snipping the hair of students are getting punished. And it's funny
Good.
because we don't
That's
have
wild.
we don't have laws to punish teachers for abusing students in schools, so they were charged under POXO, Prevention of Children from Sexual Offences Act. So the lawyer argued
Ooh.
that cutting the hair was some kind of fetish for this teacher, and that is why they were sexually exploiting the students. So that is why this teacher should be punished for cutting the hair
Well,
of
that
students.
I tell you, that's an effective strategy, though. No teacher wants to be caught up with that stuff, right? Like that's like the most like damning charge you could have as a teacher.
Schools are ridiculous. I mean, which male teacher is going to check the size of the stockings of females?
Yeah. I remember I had a principal tell me once, "You need to enforce the dress code on the girls, this or that." I'm like, "I'm no, I'm not doing that. No, you like that's your job, and I'm not going to be the one where a girl goes, "Well, why are you even looking?" And then all the students just like stare at me,
Why
like,
are you
"No,
looking?
no." Like when they make these dress codes, they never seem to think about that,
I think
right?
this reminds me of a conversation between the president of Egypt, Abdel Nasser, and the prince of Saudi Arabia. Once they were having conversation, and the Saudi king was trying to persuade Nasser to impose Islamic law all over Egypt. And so the king of Saudi says, you should enforce, you should ask your woman to cover themselves up completely in all over Egypt. He says, "Well, I can't do that. I barely know how to dress up myself. How do you like want me to personally go and put on a hijab for every single woman in my nation?" So no, no, you start with your family. If you start with your family, the nation will follow. So Nezer asked the king of Saudi Arabia, okay, where does your daughter study? Oh, in Europe. Are you able to decide what she wears or not? Oh no, she doesn't listen to me. You can't put hijab over the women of your family, and you expect me to put clothes on top of millions of women in my country. How does that work? I guess it's
Yep.
as an authoritarian person, it's very easy to write, oh, students should have this dress code and this hair and this and this. How are you going to enforce it?
Yeah. It's that's like yeah, people don't like they don't think about that. That's interesting. That's a good example. That's a really good example.
So
Um,
schools will not allow this, but yeah, I am visiting my school on 27th. They have invited me to be a judge for
oh, okay.
an event that they are having. I am an alumnus of that school, so my school is very good with its alumni. They have a lot of programs where they invite you. So I'm invited as a
Well,
judge.
that's
So it's
cool.
going to be interesting to see what the school has transformed into, what new changes have been there. Uh, I have walked into some prestigious places with colored hair before. I had a green shade before this when I went to receive my award in a room
Hmm.
full of senior editors and respected journalists, all dressed in formal wear. I go there wearing a jeans and a t-shirt to receive the first prize for being the best student journalist. Colored hair, t-shirts, spikes, and the blue jeans. And I stand there
Uh,
smiling and like, yeah, I received award. Yes, now it's time for my speech. Uh,
that's awesome, though. That's awesome.
yeah,
That is awesome. I love that.
it was funny. Like I apologize for that.
So,
I apologize for that on stage. My apologies. I was not aware of the dress code. Like nobody informs you about this. It's something you. It's a mutual understanding
oh,
you go
really?
for. Like if
Uh
you're going
huh.
for a prestigious award ceremony, you're supposed to wear formal. This was my first time, so I had no clue. So I
Well,
just
hopefully they would understand that.
yeah, they were fine with it. Nobody bothered. Like they were fine. But it was an exciting experience. To, okay, this is something one has to do.
Well, that congratulations too. I didn't know you won that award. So you were the best student journalist.
Best student journalist. I think
Awesome.
I'm also the youngest to receive that award.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I
Um,
also got featured in a lot of newspapers, so it's good. It is one of the best things to happen to me this year. That is definitely going on my resume and on my portfolio website. I also
yes.
created a portfolio website for myself because I think it is very important for young adults to have your digital presence as an online brand.
Yeah, especially if you're going into design, something like that. That's going to be important. Well, I'm glad things are going well, bud. And as always, I enjoy these conversations, and
I do too.
let's do it again soon.
Definitely.
Um, hopefully, I'll continue to stay healthy, not try to throw up on my computer like last time. And thank you for
Convert
dealing with that. And
convert into Hinduism. Don't eat beef and pork. Eat vegetarian.
we're,
You'll be healthy.
well, maybe yeah, maybe that was the gods telling me to slow down on the hot dogs. But it's always good talking to you, bud. And
Same, sir.
um, let's let's do this again soon.
Definitely. I'll just stop recording this. I'll put timestamps on it. I'll put this on YouTube.
Awesome,
Yeah. I'll give you the
awesome.
link
Yeah,
of
please do.
yeah. I'll give you the link of this and all the other videos that are already available on it. So yeah, I'll put timestamps as well, so it becomes easy. If you want to show some
Oh, that would be awesome. Please do.
affection to some of your students, it'll be very easy.
Oh, that'd be awesome, man. Yeah, yeah. Please do. Then send me the link, man. That'd be awesome. Oh, thank you so much, Malay. And
Thank you, sir.
um, well, have a good week, and I will talk to you soon.
Definitely. So you too. Have a great week. Thank you.
All right. Have a good day, bud, or good
You too,
night.
sir. Thank you
All
so much.
right.
Thank you.
See you, bud.
Bye bye.
See you. Bye.